So we just talked about how to graph them. And what we're going to look now is the difference between something you learned way back in chapter 5 and now in chapter 11. Now you are with Mr. Lankus in chapter 5. Chapter 5, you learn about this concept of direct variation. It's just a straight line, and it was y equals kx. And you guys should kind of think like, wow, that looks like y equals mx plus b. That's because k was the same thing as your slope, all right? Because it had a y-intercept of 0. Notice how it went through the middle point each time. That time, unlike here, 0, 0, 0, 0 will never be a point here unless we move it left or right. 0, 0 will always be a point here. So it's very opposite. This one, 0, 0, is always a point. And over here, 0, 0 is only a point if we move it left or right, up and down. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do with you here is I'm going to tell you how to find k for direct variation, and then I'm going to teach you how to find k for inverse variation. Okay, so let's write some small steps here. To find k on direct variation, think about it, guys. If it's y equals kx, how would we find k? You would have to divide by x. So to find k here, you would do y divided by x. Alright, just picture moving the x over. On inverse variation from today, to find k, alright, in order to find k here, you know, right, that y equals k over x. So how would you solve for k? You would multiply by x. So you'd have y times x equals k. Alright? Now what we're going to do is go into problem 4 and see how good you are at applying that concept. Problem 4. Does the data in the table, does it represent direct variation or inverse variation? For each table, write an equation that models the data. So let's look at part A. What we're going to do is we're going to test. And I like to do this. Do you guys notice how the x's in this problem, they increase, and how the y's decrease? I am always going to do that. I'm going to do increase, decrease, and then I'm going to try to figure out if that helps me. I'm going to test inverse variation first if they're opposites. Maybe I could be wrong, but let's check it out. Alright, and if it's not inverse, we're going to check direct. Alright, to check for inverse, we do y times x, and we try to get a k value. You ready? So we'll do negative 15 times 3 and get negative 45. Now move on. We'll do negative 20 times 4 and we get negative 80. Can you see how they're not the same? I don't need to do any more. This is not an inverse problem. Now I'm going to move to direct. Remember, to do direct, up here we take y and we divide by x. So we'll do y divide by x and see if we can get a constant. And constant is exactly what it sounds like, guys. It's a constant. It doesn't change. So we'll take negative 15 divided by the x of 3 and we get negative 5. Alright, now let's take negative 20 divided by 4. Look how we got negative 5 again. That's awesome. Now we'll take negative 25, we'll divide by 5, and that equals negative 5. Can you see how each time we got negative 5? That tells me that my constant of variation is negative 5, and since it fit the direct variation test, we are going to say that this is direct variation, and we're going to say y equals kx, but instead of k, we're going to write y equals negative 5x. And now we have our equation. Let's do the same thing in B. In part B, I like to notice that x is increasing. Now you might say, why is it here that one was increasing and the other was decreasing? That's because this was a negative constant, okay? Let's take a look at part B. X is increasing, y is decreasing. Again, I'm going to try for inverse. Remember, my test is y times x equals k. So let's do 2 times 9 Let's do 4 times 4.5. Let's do 6 times 3 and see what we get right away. Okay, well you know, right? You know that 2 times 9 is 18. You should kind of know, right? That 4 times 4.5 is 18. And 6 times 3 is 18. Notice how they all match. I don't even have to test for direct variation. This fits inverse variation. Since it fits my inverse variation, I know that k is equal to 18. So my inverse is y equals k over x. Remember that from the beginning of the lesson. So y equals 18 over x. Now in part A and part B, why don't you do both of those? Let me get out my answer sheet. I'll give you the answers, and then you can see how well you got them to match. Okay, so you can pause the video, try them on your own, because I'm about to write down the answers. And got it? A. I hope that you found it was inverse. I also hope that you found that your constant of variation, excuse me, it's not inverse. It is, my sticky note, it's direct. The inverse didn't work. You should have got that this one is direct. It is direct, and I'm hoping that your equation is y equals 3x. In part B, I'm hoping that you get its inverse, and I hope that you get y equals negative 48 over x. All right, if you didn't get those, please make sure that you ask when you come in tomorrow. Problem 5, yay, we have a word problem. I know you're excited. Identifying direct or inverse variation. Does each situation represent direct variation or inverse variation? Explain your reasoning. All right, so we have boating now, boating. The cost of a $120 boat rental is split among several friends. So what you want to talk about is what's happening to the money? What's happening to the cost as the friends increase or decrease? Think about it. You have 120 bucks and you're going to start splitting it. This is an inverse. Now you might be questioning, why is it an inverse? It's an inverse because the cost is going to decrease as the number of friends increase. If you guys ever think about when you go to prom, if you ever guys want to rent a limo, the more people you have, the less money you're going to spend. Okay, so it's pretty much what's happening here. The more people you have, the less money you're going to spend. Now you download several movies, and each one is $14.99. So let's think about the cost, and let's think about the number of downloads. What's happening to the cost as the number of downloads increases? I'm hoping you know as the number of downloads increases, the cost increases, right? Well, that would be a direct variation. And the reason that one's direct is because the more you download, the more you spend. Why don't you try Got It Part 5, and we'll talk about what your answers are. So I'm going to let you think about those on your own. When we come back together, we'll go over these in class. All right. Again, if you have any questions, try doing some in the lesson check. See if you really understand inverse variation. Can you graph it? Can you make an equation? Do you know how to find your constant of variation? If you can do all of those things, you really did a nice job understanding the lesson.